Jason Gordon for thatshelf.com, and we're here to talk about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Big shelf.
So this is the gazillionth time we've seen this on the big screen, but I think that one of the most extraordinary. I'm wondering if you could talk about bringing this particular iteration to life and how you've seen it sort of unfold over your many years of being connected with this property.
Well, what's so wonderful about the fact that I'm actually even here talking to you about all things Turtles 40 years after, nearly 40 years after the creation of the original comic, is that we've seen the Turtles go through a number of really fantastic iterations from, that original, Steve Barron, Jim Henson movie, which was just so fantastic, to other versions. And some throughout.
We can say Michael Bay out loud. Honestly, we can say the words Michael Bay.
Oh, actually, no, Michael Bay is one of those ones that he had a very interesting take on it. It was him and I worked directly with Jonathan Liebsman, who was a director on it, and Michael Bay oversaw it. But it was again, what's been great from, you look at the 2007 Kevin Monroe movie, which was, he wrote and directed it. It was his vision, which was fantastic. And then and I would say that out of the different versions, especially the unique versions, some I like more, some I don't like as much, but I don't not like any of them. Well, what's so fantastic after all this time, when you look at something like Mutant Mayhem, when you see someone like Jeff Rowe, who grew up as a fan of the original series, and Seth Rogen, who's a forever teenager like myself, I'm at 61, and Evans, they had things that they loved about the Turtles through those different Turtle universes and put them into a blender, so to speak, to tell their very unique version, which I absolutely adore. I think this new movie it reminds me of the first movie in that it's for kids of all ages. There's something for the adults, there's something for the kids, and it's very funny and very well told and beautiful.
It's fair to say that I'm not put words in your mouth, but that the invention of the characters themselves was itself sort of a reaction to the type of superheroics that we had taken for granted. It was sort of postmodern, slightly ironic, but it still had this sort of, integrity of the character. You actually cared about them. I'm just wondering if you could actually talk about how that level has sort of occupied the various iterations and how you've seen the sort of characters develop.
Well, what I love is when you look at the original, again, I sort of mirror everything off the original, where, because it's very reflective, and even in Mutant Mayhem, you've seen it in different ways in different versions. But with Mutant Mayhem, our first drawings of them they weren't big, muscly. They were teenagers. They were Peter Parker. They were Spider. They were just kids that needed to rise to overcome this epic obstacle of evil to do the right thing and solve the plot. But with Mutant Mayhem, I felt that that's what was so beautifully brought to life, is that not only did they look like teenagers coming into their own, they acted like teenagers, they sounded like teenagers, and they were that teenager we always wanted to be. I think for me, certainly growing up, is you wanted to be the Indiana Jones, you wanted to be the one to save the damsel in distress, if you will, or do the right thing when called upon. So seeing them in different versions, what I like is that we've come full circle back to the teenage aspect of the original title, well done and well told. And the art style reminds me of the underground feel of the comics that we did back in the day, the black and white comics, for sure.
So I think that there's real sort of dichotomy here between like taking this stuff seriously, but also recognizing that there's a sort of silliness. We've gotten so used to the notion of a title, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that we've forgotten its superficial silliness. Yeah. By naming them after classical painters, by doing all this sort of collision between the high and the low. And I'm wondering if you can sort of delve into that. But what was your intention at the time? And again, how that has shifted over the decades?
Well, the intention was paying love and homage, certainly to Jack Kirby, and our biggest inspiration. Pete and I bonded over him as an inspiration, as a storyteller, but to humbly, sort of follow in his footsteps, to write and draw and tell our own stories. But, when we were geeks in high school back in those days, it wasn't a term of endearment the way it is now. And I was a double geek because I loved art history. And, I even in my senior year in high school, I did a homage to a mural on the wall in this senior art project of my homage to Leonardo da Vinci, because I thought he was brilliant. He was, he's an artist and he's a sculptor. Anyway, but so the names and so many of the elements that compiled that original origin story and the creation of those characters were done from nobody's going to read this anyway. We're not going to sell enough copies to pay my uncle back. So we're writing it solely for ourselves, and let's just have an absolutely really good time on characters that we created and really love. So that's the passion that went into it. And it was a series of happy accidents to lead us to that first issue. And that was really the spark that's continues to be carried forward today.
And even as we wrap up, even more immortal than that mural, there are so many people that know the name Leonardo and think turtle. They don't think genius out of Da Vinci.
Isn't that crazy? But I know that's like one of those, and it reminds me of like letters we'd get in the early days where, we'd get it from an occasional parent that would say, my kid got an A in some report because they knew the names of some Renaissance artists, but it was because of the turtles, not because. But
well, certainly Donatello is getting a lot more attention than they would normally. Anyway, thank you so much.
I joke with people because Donatello was almost named Bernini back in the day, so I liked him as a sculptor better. But no, we're happy with the names that we ended up with. So, but a pleasure talking to you.
and here we are. Congratulations on your characters continuing to live through generation after generation.
Appreciate it. Nice talking with you.